Friends in a Podcast. We're so glad you're here. We're your hosts, Natasha and Lindsay.
Hi, Lindsay. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
It's so good to talk to you again.
I know. We have to start doing these in person again.
That would be so nice. Someday the dream, like have a studio, right? Where we could have a studio set up. But today we're starting part 2 of our confrontation series. And so I have a question.
All right.
So if during a disagreement, you could be any friend's character, who would you be?
Okay. So I've thought long and hard about this. I know logically I would probably be a Monica. Like, I'm just direct and to the point, blunt. I know this about myself, but I would want to be a Phoebe or a Joey and bring a little bit of humor into the situation, but not like the oblivious humor that they sometimes have, but just like the right amount of touch. You know, like when Joey puts on all the pants.
Yes. That is one of my all-time favorite episodes. Yes.
Yeah. That's the touch of humor I would like to have.
So you're going to put on all your clothes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can
I be wearing any more pants? Sorry.
Can I be wearing any more clothes? I love it. Man, see, I think that I naturally tend to like lean towards being the tension breaker with something funny, whether it's rightly timed or not. I'm not that good at it, but I do try. But I would want to be Chandler because I do appreciate his comedic timing.
Mm-hmm.
And he still is like sensitive enough that he knows like when to be serious, especially like in the later seasons when he is with Monica. Like they have some of their like things that they have to work through. And I feel like he does a pretty good job.
Yeah. So you want like the best of both worlds and balanced.
Yes. 100%.
Monica brings it out in him. So I'm just saying.
So you are the Monica and I am the Chandler. Is that what we're saying?
Maybe in this friendship, that's how it goes.
I love that.
I've often been told in conversations, well, you didn't have to be so blunt about that. I did. It's just my nature.
I mean, sometimes being blunt can be really helpful though, right? Like if you're doing it tactfully, like what's the point of beating around the bush if it just needs to be said, right?
No, that's
like
fair. I haven't always been tactful with it, but over the years I've gotten better.
I believe that about you. I know. So we're talking about confrontation with friends today, which is a lot different than confrontation with your family, for a lot of different reasons, because your family you're born into, right? You don't really get the choice in who your family is, but with your friends, you do get to choose to have them. And I think that plays a really big role when you're talking about confrontation with friends, because it almost feels like there's more at stake because you did choose to have them as part of your life and you have shared vulnerable things with the people that you choose to share it with. And so when you have to confront a friend about something, I think it like hits the heart a little differently.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. We've talked in previous episodes about the word intimate and how it doesn't have to just be like a relational, like an intimate relationship with a partner, but in friendship too, and breaking that word down to intimacy, and so intimacy, and how whenever we allow people into our lives like that, our friends, they see the most intimate parts of us, you know, our hard moments, our maybe too blunt moments, but the good and the bad, right?
Yeah. And so it's harder to come up with there isn't an easy solution for it. But if you're coming from a place that you have to fix something that's broken, hopefully it helps give space to help clarify each other's perspectives, because we're trying to fix something, right? We're not coming at each other to tear you down. If I'm coming to you with something, I want to fix something because it feels like it's broken. And then hopefully we can have a conversation about what it is and come to an end result that hopefully fix or mends some of what's broken.
Right. And I think, not to be repetitive, but going back to our last episode where we talked about navigation versus confrontation, I
Mm.
think that if we come to an agreement that our end goal is to end on a civil page with each other, even if that means we're agreeing to disagree, that's okay in friendship too, to agree to disagree on topics, but to respect each other's opinions and POVs at the end of it, and end on a mutual understanding. Doesn't have to be an agreement, just a mutual understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the perspective of fixing something, and like you said, to go back to last episode, it's navigation. We're trying to navigate, how do we come to terms with this? Like, is this something that we can put behind us? Is this something that we need to work through to find a common ground? Or is it something like you were just saying, like, come to an agreement? Maybe you're agreeing to disagree, but at least you've had the conversation and now you can put it to rest and move forward.
Yeah, I agree. Something I've thought about this week is the approach. Sometimes the approach is the scariest part of that, right? When you're in confrontation with someone. So, how do you approach somebody that maybe has hurt you or wronged you? And maybe they know that they did, or maybe they don't know yet. Maybe you have to confront them to tell them that they hurt you.
Yeah. I think part of that is assuming best intent, right? Like, if this person's coming to me and saying, like, hey, this really hurt my feelings, or I was really shocked that this is how you responded, and I don't appreciate the words that you said to me, whatever that is, like, assuming best intent means they're not coming at me to tear me down or to make me feel like I'm a terrible human being, right? Like, I trust this person. They've been a part of my life for a long time. And so I'm going to choose to believe that what they're bringing to me is something that they're doing out of the goodness of their heart, or because it really did affect them. And I would want to take responsibility for that, because that relationship means so much to me, that I wouldn't want there to be a rift in our relationship because of something that I did. And so I would start with that. Like, if they're approaching me about something, assuming best intent, because then hopefully I can listen to what's being said and not get defensive immediately, because you don't hear it the same if you're defensive and your walls are up and you're guarded, because then you're going to be listening to respond and not necessarily listening to hear what they're saying.
Yeah. No, that's such a good point. And I think whenever we're listening to respond, we're listening to be defensive and to be in conflict, but when we're listening to hear, we're listening to heal at the end of the
Oh,
day.
that's so good. Can you say that again?
Yeah, like when we're listening to hear, we're actually listening to heal.
I want to sit with that for a second. Like, that just hits so hard. Like, it's true though. Like, if we're having a real conversation about what's going on and we're assuming best intent of the other person, we want to listen to heal what's going on, not listen to respond to how it makes us feel. Because, yeah, in the moment, I'm going to feel hurt. Like, you brought this up to me, and in the moment, that might hurt me.
Mhm.
But at the end result isn't that I'm hurt, it's that what I did hurt you. So I have to take responsibility for that. Whether or not I agree on how it came across, I still have to own that and say, I'm so sorry. That wasn't my intention, and clarify what you mean, like what I meant by what I said,
Mhm.
and say, I'm sorry. Like, that wasn't what I meant. But yeah, listening to heal is so good.
Yeah, that's just been on my mind a lot this week as we've kind of been bouncing ideas off on this. It just kind of has resonated with me. We need to listen to heal. And I think that only happens when we're listening to hear what the other person truly has to say, and clarifying where they're coming from. And I guess just to kind of backtrack a little bit on that. So if we're being confronted, or being approached with conflict, or if we feel conflict, what are those maybe reasons? Like, what causes conflict?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And I think we did kind of jump right to, like, how do we address it?
Yeah.
But if we're looking at confrontation, I think one of the biggest things is unspoken expectations.
Mm.
When we don't clarify what we're saying or what we mean, or when we don't share what is in our head of what we're expecting of the other people, um, that's when it gets really messy, right? Like if I said, like, hey, come on over to my house. I don't give you a time frame, but in my head, I expect you there by noon, and you show up at 3, and then I'm upset because half of the afternoon is gone. That's not your fault. I didn't say come to my house at noon. I said,
Hmm.
hey, stop by whenever you're ready. Right. And so then that can create a conflict with us because I had made plans and I wanted us to go do all these things, and we can't do them now because it's 3 o'clock, and it creates messiness. Right. But if I was clear and said, hey, come to my house at 12, I want us to go do all of these things, then it gives you the expectation on what time to be there. It gives me the way to plan out what's happening for the afternoon. And then it works better for everybody. But I think a lot of times we start with conflict because we're not sharing what our expectations are.
Hmm.
And not every expectation, I don't think, has to be voiced out loud. But for a lot of them, I think that it would create a lot less conflict if we did.
Yeah. And I think on the opposite end of that is just being graceful if they don't meet your unspoken expectations. Like if you're not saying what your expectations are and people aren't meeting what you think they should be meeting, like maybe reevaluate your expectations and have a little grace on the person at the same time, right? Like we all operate different. We all have our own agendas and our own day-to-day lives. Things get in the way and all of those pieces. And I think that just being able to give grace a little bit more, I think we sometimes forget that piece, like the grace giving piece. And not that this has caused any conflict. I want to put this out there as a parameter, but or a disclaimer. But like this week, I started a new job. You texted, asked like how I'm doing with my job, and I respond. And like sometimes it's the next day, but I know that you're busy, right? Like you've had stuff going on this week.
Yeah.
I could easily turn and be like, well, she's not texting me back. She doesn't actually really care about how my week goes. I've never felt like that once, just FYI. But as an example, I could turn it into that, right? But then,
Yeah.
like, I have to put on your point of view too, right? Like, you have a family, it's the end of the school year. I'm sure that your kiddos have so many different school events happening and homeworks and things like that that you're just trying to wrap up the school year. Your family leads a whole ministry. There's things going on there, but I, in my own, like, well, I could be selfish and not give grace in those moments or things like that. So I just think, like, again, that's literally has not caused any issues, but if as an example, that is something where, like, if I expected you to text me back right away, I might need to look at my expectations and is that realistic of the other person? And so I think looking at it from the mindset is sometimes with our expectations, we need to reevaluate what our expectations of other people are, and also understanding, like, unless we clearly communicate what we need from people, like, it's unclear. If it's unclear, it's unkind, and we need to give them grace and some kindness when we're navigating friendships together.
Absolutely. And it's not always an easy thing because a lot of times our life can feel imbalanced in a
Yeah.
lot of areas because especially like you brought up, like you just started a new job this past week, and I just got back from a trip and we're kind of getting back into the routine, and it was my husband's birthday over the weekend, and then we had a wedding and a graduation all on the same day, and like so all of these things were happening, and so it does feel imbalanced, and like you're sharing from your side, like she hasn't responded, and on my side I'm like I haven't even talked to you in 2 days, and I just like I don't even know what's happening honestly because we're trying to keep up with so many things. And so when there's life changes like that and there's all of these imbalances, I think that kind of goes back to the balance versus rhythm and understanding that life happens in a rhythm. And so right now our rhythm is kind of wonky and it doesn't really feel like a rhythm. It feels like choppy waves, right? Like you get kind of knocked down and you have to stand back up and keep trying. And so if we weren't giving grace to each other, it would be really easy for that to create a conflict for us because I
Absolutely.
haven't talked to you in 2 days. You have a lot going on in your life with job transitions and new routines and a lot of emotions that go on with that. So like it's really easy to take something really small and turn it into something big just because of the nature of what's happening. And if we're not clearly communicating with each other, then we could definitely have some fractures happening.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm so thankful that we're secure enough in our relationship that we understand the ebbs and flows of life and that we each go through them. We're both in very different seasons of our life. And I think that that helps us understand the balance. So when life changes and we personally feel a little imbalanced, it helps our friendship stay balanced, right? At the end of the day. And so I always smile when you text me the next morning because I'm like, oh, she has a free moment. And like, this is her time to be able to catch up and like do those things. And so, yeah, I agree. I think that we have to understand that not everybody's life is our life and not everybody's balance is our balance. And that is where that rhythm comes into play, right? Balance is the framework, rhythm is what ebbs and flows within that framework.
Yeah. And can you help us like talk through, you just said something that reminded me of like how we're secure in our relationship. Um, what happens though if we're not secure in our relationship enough to understand the ebbs and flows of life or the expectations that we set and all of that? Like, how do we still navigate having conflict or like those things that could create conflict if we're not secure in the relationship enough to be able to feel that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, let's go back to the example, right? Like not getting back to text messages right away. That seems so small, but sometimes that can feel really big in navigating a relationship, especially if that's your main form of communication. Like for us, we don't live in the same town, we don't see each other very often. So, a lot of times our form of catch up is either a FaceTime call or a lot of times text messages. I think that again, having open communication with the person, setting your expectations with them, or just asking, "Hey, I haven't heard from you for a few days. Is everything okay?" And maybe making sure that you're using more of like a, "Are you okay?" Like navigating it with them and not saying like, "I feel like you're ignoring me. I feel like you're not getting back to me in time." Like maybe that
Mhm.
person has a lot going on and just pause for a second and make sure they're okay, and you can really open a lot of doors of conversations, and that person might text you back and be like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, this week has just been so crazy, I've had this going on, I just got back from a trip, it was my husband's birthday, like whatever the situations are. And like they can, you give them an open door to explain and communicate with you what's going on, as opposed to coming in with I statements, which often can look like accusations towards the other person.
That's so good. Yeah. I feel like you hurt my feelings, or I, how, or, and on that same thought, like the, on the same thought of accusations, sometimes generalized statements can feel very accusatory. Like, you never answer my text messages.
Mm,
That's not going to be a helpful conversation if you're saying, if you're accusing them of never responding to you in that kind of way, rather than asking, how are you? Are you
mhm,
good? But if you start the conversation off with, you never listen to me, or you always, like those kind of like overarching generalized statements can come across as accusations. So yeah, I think how you frame the question can really make or break a conversation.
yeah, and have concrete examples ready. Like, hey, I texted you a couple of days ago. I didn't hear back. I followed up. I still haven't heard back. I just want to make sure everything's okay. And
Yeah.
really like having those examples of those pieces, or when you said this, it made me feel this way, or when we had this conversation, I walked away not feeling great about it. And I wanted to just address that with you. And I think just making sure that you're coming at it from a sensitive spot of, again, going back to, I want to heal this. I want to fix what's broken because I've invested so much time into you and you've invested time into me. And now we've gone into these deep, deep wells together. I don't want to leave that behind, because we spent a lot of time digging that well together to get there, to get to where we are.
And that also shows the other person too. Like, I value your friendship. I
Mm,
value you as a person and this relationship that we've cultivated over the years. So let's fix this broken piece of it so we can earn that trust back and and move forward because I want you to be a part of my life. And I want you to continue to like have, access to my life and all these things that are happening around us. And I don't want this one thing to break down everything that we built.
Yeah. And I think, when there's a crack in the foundation, you have to start there, right? Like you could find a hole a foot away. I'm not a builder, but I can only imagine that you can find a hole 3 feet away from the crack in the foundation and you can patch that hole up. But if you don't fix the foundation, eventually that's going to continue to break and it's going to continue to rip apart. So I think that you have to go back to when did this start? And sometimes it's not just the miss of the text message, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes that's just the tipping point of a lot of other things that have been broken for a long time. And you have to go back and fix that. And sometimes that means you have to humble yourself and say, I messed up. I didn't address this when I should have. And I just kind of let things go. And now this is why we're here.
That's so true. And it's hard because, again, with friends, you've invested so much. It it feels very different. And it's not easy to go to your friend and say, "Hey, I really messed this up. Can we talk about it?" And there's a heaviness that comes with that. And it's okay to feel that heaviness. And it's okay to bring that into the conversation because then it shows how open and vulnerable you are to the reality that, like, this sucks. And I don't want it to continue this way. And I didn't mean to hurt you. And I want better for us because I value your friendship. And so, what can we do to fix the foundation? And sometimes those conversations are going to hurt and they're going to feel hard, but it's going to be hard before it gets better
Mm,
because you have to work through that awkwardness and address the really hard things before it can get better.
I agree. And again, not to be repetitive, we've talked about our restoration story in the first season. And, when I look back at that, I, have a lot of regret about how our friendship took a pause for several years because I wasn't willing to confront things that I saw in relationships and call things out in myself, in our friendship, in the things that were going on around us. And my response to that was, I'm just going to shut down. I'm going to shut off. I'm not going to talk to either party at this point, and I'm just going to walk away completely. And I walked away from our relationship in other relations, not just ours, from a lot of relationships. And there was a
Yeah.
lot of rebuilding that came from that. And it wasn't until I took a giant slice of humble pie and, you know, reached out to you. And it wasn't just all right, I want to be friends again. Great.
Yeah.
Here we are. You know what I mean? Like we had to fix the crack in the foundation and we had to really go back to the why and
Mhm.
rebuild from there. And here we are. But it wasn't an easy
No,
overnight thing. So,
no, it wasn't. But it was worth it though. Like,
yeah,
I'm so glad that we walked through that awkward, hard, like that conversation. I really think not only fixed the crack in the foundation, but made it stronger so that moving forward, we know how to handle that moving forward, but also that our foundation is solid.
yeah. And, it taught me a lot about confrontation and admitting my wrongs, being humble, and kind of leading with that because growing up I didn't have a great example of confrontation, and so I think that a lot of times that hindered my ability to have those hard conversations with people because I just knew the nature of shutting down, right?
Mm.
So I think for me the takeaway from our conversation in this today's episode is that in order to restore, you have to be willing to listen to heal and you have to be willing to have the tough conversations. And if I could have had this conversation with myself 3 or 4 years ago, longer than that now because we've been back at this for 5 years building, I guess. So I
Yeah,
guess it's been a long time. So maybe
yeah.
even 8 years ago, if I could have had this conversation with myself 8 years ago at 30, I wouldn't have missed out on so many years in between of our friendship. I'm thankful, as crazy as it is. I hate that we had that break, but I'm also thankful for that break
Mhm.
because it taught me a lot about confrontation and how to have healthy conversations around conflict. So if you're someone who's, struggling with that, just know that there are tools out there and there are ways to repair and restore. And that doesn't mean every relationship gets that attention, because there
Yeah.
are probably times that it is time to walk away, and that's okay. And we can talk about that in another episode. Um, but you deserve to have healthy relationships, and it takes two people who are willing to listen, who are willing to heal together and walk through those steps together. That's a wrap on this episode of Two Main Friends in a Podcast. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram. You can also send us an email at twomainfriends@gmail.com. And as always, leave us a review wherever you're listening.